Yeah! Welcome everyone to a Mere Mortals Meandering session with your two favourite Mere Mortals. You've got Kyrin here.
You got Juan over here,
Juan
folks.
here, and we're recording this the day before it's released, Sunday 30th of July. Meandering session is one where we get together, we just talk a little bit of whatever's on our mind, what we're finding interesting, any news, any exciting stuff. And I got a bit of exciting
You've got a few
things.
exciting things.
It's even related to what I'm wearing and what I've got in my hands.
Okay, here we go.
I've kind of decided upon some travel plans, I think.
Okay, Europe?
I got a rough plan of attack and maybe a little bit less Europe than you might have thought. So,
Okay.
my main thing, so for those who are unaware, travel-wise, I've been across a fair chunk of Latin America in 2018, 2019, Japan, and then Australia, New Zealand, I've kind of seen a lot of. And I've had in my mind for ages, like, I want to go to Europe. I want to travel there. I want to see this part of the history, things like that.
You have some of the language now kind of coming in pad, German,
Yeah,
Spanish there.
That's my reasoning for learning German and wanting to go to Spain because I already have a decent Spanish. And I had some experiences recently. My friend Lucas has gone back to Brazil. It's a little bit of a bittersweet moment these last couple of days because I've been pretty good friends with him for like a yearish now, and especially the last 6 months. And as I was having like goodbye drinks with him, and we were just talking about like, you know, what's he going to do in Brazil, what's going to happen and whatnot, I was like, fuck, I really want to go to Brazil now. Like, I kind of have to go to Brazil. And so the very day that he left, because we went to the airport at a ridiculous time, I woke up at before 5. Probably the first time in years I've
Ridiculous.
done that. I know, it's ridiculous, right?
Normal.
It's ridiculous.
Normal.
It's not, no one should be up at this time. And so I had like a huge day ahead of me because I just gained like an extra
few hours.
4
10
hours. Yeah. Life hacking. And so I did a bit of research and I was like, okay, what actually is the temperatures in Europe like at, October? What's it like in July? In kind of just outside of the summer months. It's fucking awful, man. I don't want to go there. Jesus Christ,
rainy?
no. Not rain. I didn't even look at the rain, man. I don't even. The rain is less important to me than the actual temperature itself. And I realized I only want to be there during 2, maybe 3 months of the deadest of heat.
What
of
was
summer.
the Celsius degrees
So basically, like, not really getting above 30 much. This is average temperatures, so obviously varies. But like minimum temperature was getting into at the peak across the various different cities because I just pulled up, main cities of Europe sort of deal. Especially Germany, not that warm, man. Like average peak temperature of maybe 29, average min temperature of like high teens, maybe dipping into the low 20s. Mm-hmm. Comparable to Brisbane and maybe a spring or coming out of summer into the autumn, which are some of my, I really enjoy that. And yeah, basically I looked and I was like, June? No, that's just, it's not worth it. It's still too cold.
Yeah.
Getting into October, November, not worth it. Not worth it at all. So I basically went like, oh shit, the one constant in my plan is I want to go to the Bitcoin 2024 in Nashville, which is at the end of July. So I kind of need to be in Nashville on that date. Mm-hmm. And then it was kind of looking, okay, would I go to Europe beforehand, go there, then come back? And yeah, I just went, okay, you know what? This is much easier. I kind of got a plan of attack. I can go to South America, Brazil in particular, in kind of April, May, maybe part of June. Work my way up. And when I say work my way up, I'd skip a lot of countries and just fly. Maybe to El Salvador, maybe go into Nashville a little bit early. Maybe, Colombia or Peru if I feel like kind of doing those portions of there, which I never really got to see. Be in Nashville for the Bitcoin thing, and then fly into Germany, and then kind of spend 3 months chasing the warmer weather down into, Germany, maybe Austria, Liechtenstein, and then across into like Spain, Portugal sort of deal. So that's kind of my rough plan of attack at the moment. So yeah, it's kind of exciting. So and that would be about 7 months in total.
Okay, and see, this is an interesting one when you've presented this because something's also triggered on my side. And I don't know exactly what I can pinpoint it being to or when it sort of occurred. Maybe it was the birth of my daughter. Maybe it was prior to. Honestly, that doesn't sound exciting to me anymore.
Okay.
And I'll give you another example.
Well, it's never been exciting
Well,
to you.
but here's an interesting one. That would have been like, whoa, that's super cool in the past. And this is only recent, right? Like maybe a year ago.
Here's Juan trying to be a Debbie Downer.
No. If you said this a year ago to me, I would have gone, man, that's cool because you're going to go to the event now. But we'll put a caveat to that and you'll see what it is. You know, you're saying you'll travel from Brazil to do this, to do that. Honestly, a big part of it, I go, nah, whatever. Cool, that sounds good, but it's whatever. But it's not a unique thing to you. Recently, someone from the gym that I go to at CrossFitorian, they were also going on a world tour. They were going on a world trip. Again,
well, that's what mine's kind of becoming.
Which is what yours is becoming. And again, they were doing a massive world trip. I was kind of like, nah, okay. Now, let's preset this with a couple of things. One, I've traveled myself quite a bit now, and there are circumstances definitely that have changed to the point where I don't really want to go and just traveling randomly to different places. That doesn't seem as fun to me anymore, at least in the right now. So that's one caveat. Let's put that right out there. That's why I'm saying this. Two, the bits that I get excited for in what you're telling me would be events. And this is perhaps something that's either changing in me, maybe it's being reinforced more. That Bitcoin Nashville event, things like probably VCon in the following year, all of that excites me to go to. I'm less excited now where I am in my life to say like, oh, go to Brazil or go to Germany. I kind of go, for what? Right? And that's obviously a very different view. I think this is now starting to become an unorthodox view to most people would have. Totally get it. And I think this will change when my daughter's older, when perhaps I feel like there's more of a care factor to traveling. So this shouldn't be a thing of, hey, what you're trying to do isn't going to be cool. I think in general, for the mere mortalites, and I think that's what I was trying to get to, the mere mortalites, I think would think it's cool. For me, I kind of go, nah. It's honestly, in my mind, I go, but I'm placing it on what it is for me. And so I think for you, holy shit, I think that would be, again, fun, just like you found in your Latin American trip, right? It's going to be like an amazing journey, which I've seen of another mate. But again, another example, I guess, to compare it to. A friend of mine just recently who traveled around Australia, he came back home and he's been talking about, hey, it'd be so fun to go and, you can work from here and you can go do this and you can go travel. And I didn't pull him up on it a lot of the time, just because he was more so studying for himself. And then he started, persuading like, oh, you could do that. You can be free to do this. I have another friend who moved to Portugal, who then went to the States to go back to Portugal to kind of share his message, how you can live free and you can go travel the world. And now all my mind goes to is, man, I don't want that. Like, I just do not want that. That's not what I want.
Well, good thing we're not doing it for you, one.
Yeah, but I'm like, I'm building this life now where I'm like really happy with it. That's what I want. And so I want to caveat this one where I go, am I excited for this? As Kyrin tells me, I'm like, that doesn't fill me with excitement. But the trip in itself, especially the event, sounds like an exciting thing that would be for you. That sounds like what you'd be up to. A question for you though, for the travel. You flipped from going is mostly from Europe to now probably mostly in the Americas, or you're still spending quite a bit of time in Europe?
It would be about half. I was kind of contemplating even my own, what would I want to get out of this last time? And,
that was going to be my question. It's kind of like, because he is very clear. My outcome for such a trip would be like, well, fuck that. There's no real outcome that I get here in such a trip. But for you, what's the outcome on the...
So, yeah, once again, I'm not doing this for you, so it's okay. When I compared my last one, I didn't really have a plan last time. I bought a one-way ticket to Chile, and I went, okay, I'm just going to see what's going to happen. I imagine I'm going to spend most of my time in Latin America, which I did. And when I look at what I was doing there, I think a lot of it was finding myself. No, not really. It was very much like a self-development phase. I was spending a lot of time learning the grammar of Spanish, like really, I'm talking hours of a day. So I wasn't like, backpacking, cahooting around, getting drunk at hostels and things like this. No,
and you did do some of that, but it wasn't, that wasn't the outcome of the trip.
It'd be like, once a week, if that. And, I look at, that one was very much about places and new things for me. I wanted to see new places. I wanted to go to, the middle of the jungle and see some random temple. I did that. I wanted to go to stunning sunsets on Isla Holbox in Mexico. I did that sort of deal. And I have some really fond memories of that. Would I want to replicate that? No, not really. The thing that really got me interested in going to Brazil, I'd never really been that keen on Brazil before. Brazilians are fine, but it's just another language to learn. Their culture is very much similar to many of the other places. But what convinced me, or what not convinced me, what triggered in my mind was the kind of story that Lucas was painting was like, you can come, you can meet my family, we can do barbecues together. He's a PT, so he knows all of these gyms, and he lives in Londrina. It's like, I'm mispronouncing that. It's Londrina. Okay. And it's basically like a, Portuguese version of London.
Right.
So you probably never heard of that. It's kind of west of Sao Paulo by a big chunk.
Wow.
And it's still a big city, but very similar to Brisbane. It's got a river going through it, and that excited me. Going and meeting his friends, kind of integrating into the culture a bit, spending time with him, learning what Brazil is like from an actual Brazilian, and a good friend at that. That was what made me go, oh, okay, I'd want to do that. So would I want to go to Iguazu? Maybe, but I wouldn't really care that much about that.
So, just to dissect that, it doesn't sound like to me that you don't have it wasn't the Brazil being the factor, is, hey, there's someone in this country who would be able to show me the culture, and so for that, I'm more excited.
Yes,
I'm kind of thinking,
definitely.
If he was from Germany and say the same offer, you would probably change your plans to go to Germany?
Maybe. Like, it's...
I'll bait the cold, but there's probably there was a lot of influence of the person or the culture or the experiences there.
Austria, if I miss Austria, that's totally fine. I don't know any Austrians here. If there's any out there and who want to convince me to come to their awesome country, like, please, reach out and let me know. And if there was someone actually saying like, come to Austria, that would be a much more of an incentive. Which is also getting to the second point was, okay, the cultural experience, yes. And then you mentioned the events. I would go to Nashville and go to Bitcoin Park, which is something that Matt Odell, you wouldn't probably know him, but he's a Bitcoiner, Bitcoin podcast. I really like him. I would go there a week or 2 weeks early just to be able to spend some time and go to one of the events there. I would go to El Salvador to be able to meet some people, and then this is also the other thing of kind of podcast
that one
related.
aspect I was like, oh, that would be cool. Actually, El Salvador would be cool. That does pique my interest even right immediately. I'd be like, oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, and for me it would be interesting because I hear a lot of people saying like, oh yeah, this is especially at the Bitcoin meetup here in Brisbane, saying as if they're going to move there, and I'm like, you move your entire life.
Makes sense if you've got a lot of crypto.
No, it doesn't. It makes sense. It makes sense if you have lived in another country and want to live the expat lifestyle. I think there's a lot of glamorizing of the expat lifestyle, and I don't look. I haven't lived it per se myself in a year in another country. I haven't done that. I was kind of traveling, but I kind of got a half experience, and a lot of people talk shit about Australia, but fuck, man, you think El Salvador's cool just because it's got some Bitcoin stuff going on? Like,
no, well, I guess
I think you need a reality check.
I wasn't coming across that in that particular perspective, because definitely Australia's, from all the places I've lived in the world, it's very good. It's very good. And, I was more so thinking in the sense of, well, if you've got a ton of low crypto, would you move over there for a short amount of time to offload that, get some tax-free gains, and move around the world?
I'm talking about people who are saying they'll
living there forever type of deal.
Yeah. But yeah, I would go to there. Germany, one of the interesting things about that was obviously I think there's a fair bit of crypto adoption there for Bitcoin, and I know some like Gigi. I'd love to meet him in person. And this was the other thing, being able to use this as an opportunity to meet people who I want to have on the podcast, and being able to do that in person would be just fucking
awesome.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it would be good.
I would fly out to probably Norway to go to Mikhail, and do a live one with him, and maybe get some handstand tips. I would seriously consider, if I And I need to change my mindset because when you're in Europe, everything is so close. You don't need to plan as much.
Yeah.
So when I'm thinking like, I'm going to be in Germany and just getting over to France or London, that's just it's so many countries away. So far away. It's an hour flight or something.
Yeah.
I need to change that mindset of once I'm in this country, I can't go elsewhere. So I would go to London to meet Sam Sethi and Oscar, and I'd maybe even do that just for a weekend, just to do that. So it's kind of mixing in bits of, it's not events per se, but also people. Like I would love to meet those people and just form a connection and then do some podcasting work, I guess. So I think
for you, fast forward, you go through the 7 months, you come back to Australia. Would you have said it's a success if the trip was, I connected with a whole bunch of different people and new people that I wanted to, less so about I went and saw the Big Ben or I saw this location? Yep.
Less so, yes, because I think I can get more appreciation for they've been around for a millennia. It's unlikely that they're going to disappear in the next 30 years. And so I feel these experiences now are ones which are kind of in the moment, the being able to connect with these people. It's going to matter less in 10, 20 years' time when I've got a family, when I'm more settled down, when I'm that sort of stuff. So, that it feels like the historical appreciation of sites and of places and history. I think that can kind of wait a little bit.
Yeah, and I can see that. I can see that, to be honest, in many points. And I guess I'm asking these questions because I was trying to source from me, like, how would I actually define it? Because this has come up, this is not just unique here. It's come up now, like, a few times when people tell me about travel and whatnot. I've just been like, don't tell me.
Longer travels, you mean?
But maybe it sources from what am I optimizing? What's the ultimate outcome at the moment in a very short term? And it's really just about family and doing some things with the family. And so to go elsewhere, like even to see, like, especially see places, like to see things, I kind of fall in the same line that you're talking about. Like, the mountain's there, the mountain's going to be there in 10 years and I can probably go there. Yes, you can make a call to say, well, you might die in 5 years. Sure, well, I'd still rather be doing this than going there.
Yeah.
But for you, the ultimate outcome, it sounds like, is to meet people, for one, across the go to the events, but I absolutely tick for. I mean, I went to VCon and honestly, I didn't get to go to VCon the second time, but I saw a lot of joy from that. Like, there was just joyous events of meeting similar-minded people, off to the side, connecting with other areas. It's fun. I can totally get behind that.
If they move that to June or July, I might go to it.
I don't know if they'll probably just stick around with the same May target.
Yeah,
given
that's
a
bit too early for me.
But no, I mean, so I will say I'm excited for you to meet and increase the community that you're finding. Do you find, so then let's fast forward a little bit to a different topic actually I want to talk about. One of my mates reached out to me and he actually connected with me saying like, Juan, like, I'm lonely. I want a partner. Like, that's it. He started making a lot of money, then he kind of lost a little bit, back to being a little bit more money. But in all this, he's like, you know what? I've always had this mentality of, I'll do it later. I'll leave for later. I'll do my traveling later. I'll connect with people later. I'll just make it all up right now, and then I can do that later. And I guess the later's coming to to fruit and being like, well, you now don't have a partner. You're not connecting with people, and he gets this. At least personally for him, he's getting into a mental space of I'm not worth it. I just feel like shit. I'm not good enough, etc. Which
I get it.
Rationally looking, I was sort of talking to him, dude. We all get that. Everyone gets that. Immortalites, we all get this. That's not a unique thing to you. It can differ, and you have to be.
I think the intensity can be.
It can wane and
higher.
It can throw. Do you think there will be? And this is a question back from the previous trip, 18-19, moving into this new trip that you're planning through. Is there potential for you to come back with a lot of positive feelings, but then sort of like the post-travel blues that comes afterwards sometimes? Have you ever thought about that? Did you feel that from your last trip at all?
No, I don't think I've ever felt that. I'm not sure what that would be in reference to. Like, what are you feeling sad about? That a portion of your life is ending, maybe? I can kind of get that. Depends what you mean exactly.
And maybe we're going to show we're not as mere mortalites as we appear. Because I haven't really felt that way too much either. There's the classic when someone wins a gold medal. Or when someone wins a championship.
Like imposter syndrome?
No, not imposter syndrome.
I've never felt that. I don't understand that
not
one.
imposter syndrome,
that's a weird one to me.
I mean, we're both so shit. don't need imposter syndrome at all. But it's more like you win something, and then it's like, well, so what? Like, now what? Now what do I do? What's my next big thing? And there's a lot of documented things about people who win things or who are at the top of the game, which then feel real depressed. Michael Phelps felt this after he was amazing. He went through like a massive depression state.
Yeah.
So I can see that blues because you've succeeded or done thing. It could, and that's what I was trying to ask for you, because if you went into your 18, 19 and you succeeded, you did it. And maybe again, you're going to go your travels, you're going to go do it, and you're going to accomplish everything. And then when you get back home, it's like, okay, so what? It sounds like you didn't have that experience last time and perhaps won't have it this time either.
Yeah, I mean, last time, I think I've mentioned this, as soon as I flew into the Chilean airport, I felt like I'd succeeded in what I wanted to do, which was fly to another country where I didn't speak the language, and I was kind of terrified of doing that. And it's just this bizarre experience of getting off the plane, walking in the airport, you're going down this long tunnel and you turn left and you turn right, and then you have to go to the bloody Australian section because they don't like us and we don't like them, and there's an extra fee and all this sort of stuff. And I just remember being like, I've done it. I've succeeded. There's nothing.
Do you think you'll have a similar feeling this time around? Will there be
No, because that one was very there was a thing I needed to do, but I'm not sure I've ever felt that from anything. If I had a great year at soccer, if I got this job, if I passed, finally finished uni or anything like that, I don't think I've ever felt any blues per se afterwards. Probably because I've kind of always just got other stuff going on, I guess. If anything, I should have felt it when I came back, because I had nothing going on then. That was where I came back from Latin America, and then it was like, what am I going to do now, Kyrin?
Yeah, and look, the next question I'm about to ask, this is not of like sadness, nor of like a warning or anything. I don't think it comes, but it's a curiosity. Do you feel like there might be a potential that you get over there, maybe not Brazil, because you're going to be with someone who's a friend and you'll be along, and then you'll start traveling and you'll be somewhere else to get to a point like, man, I've kind of done this already. Why am I doing this again? What am I actually doing this for? Could there be a potential of that if you don't meet people?
No, not really, because I could ask the same thing about myself right now. What am I doing the podcast for? Why am I out here with Juan on this day? Those kind of like the deep life ones, which I guess, they crop up every now and then, but not too much.
Well,
for me,
speak to it more specifically though. Do you get those feelings and just deviate them away, or do you get those feelings and kind of rationalize them, justify and be like, oh, that's fine, and just kind of move on?
I don't think I particularly experience them in the sense that you're asking right now. So yeah, not particularly. I don't see the difference between wondering what I'm doing in life when I'm in El Salvador versus here in Brisbane, Australia.
Yeah,
I think that's the same thing.
And these are. It's I don't even know how to state this. It's weird in the sense that you're very different to me in the sense of what you're finding there is exciting. Would have been to me many years ago doing something like, if I was single and doing something different, right? But we do different things. But yet, at the heart of it, we both have this sort of feeling or maybe mindset where it's kind of okay. Like, you could be here, you could be doing something else, but we're not really sitting and lamenting the fact that we're not doing something else. Sure, it happens every now and again. Like you would say, fuck, I wish I would find somebody, but it's not eating your whole world up and you're not going into some depressive state. Why for both of us do we feel that way? Because generally, like, I guess I'm just trying to think it through myself, and it's obviously different reasons, but in similar senses, I'm like, man, it's fine. Like, if I'm doing this, there's a reason. If it's not happening, you've called it out, I might sit on it for a little bit, a couple of minutes, but then kind of go away and go, cool.
I think I got an answer for that. I would say it's because it's probably one thing we're both relatively good at is introspection, and it's not like you need to be 100% introspective all the time. It's kind of like a course correction. So if you're flying a plane, I was looking at a plane the other day, and I was going like, oh man, that plane is making a beeline for wherever it's going, because it's far away enough from the airport now that it must be, they're trying to save fuel efficiency. That pilot is fucking going like, exactly where he needs to go.
Yeah.
But that autopilot is constantly doing minor corrections and making sure that it's on that course.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of think introspection can kind of be like that. If you got a rough idea of what you want in life, it doesn't need to be super solid. For me, it's generally like to live a good life, to get through life so that I don't end up depressed or bitter or anything like that. I think a good life, regardless of all the other things that can happen, like cancer or sudden deaths or financial things or whatever, if you can do that, that's okay. And introspection is a good way of kind of course correcting that. If I'm in the middle of Colombia, like I was sometimes, and I start to feel like, oh, what am I doing here? It's kind of having that introspection and being like, oh, well, I've kind of met a girl. I'm going to meet her again in a couple of months' time, and I'm still wanting to see these different places and meet these people. And I think having that kind of constant check-in can kind of, and I'm saying kind of a lot here, I should stop doing that.
And a lot of like as well.
Yeah. It's because it's one of those topics I haven't thought, kind of coming up in the moment, kind of. And well,
I'll save you here for a second. What is super interesting is that I took a mate's call last night, very late. And my feedback to him about this very topic was the exact same thing.
Okay.
That's exactly what I said. I said, look, to be frank, you're going through this mindset, you're going through all the things, you're thinking all negatively and whatnot. Introspection and perspective, dude. Because yes, you feel that way when you're negative, and I guess this is more from a broader base like comment. Yes, when you feel like shit, well, you're going to go and think through all these bad paths and whatnot. What I was saying to him was, what becomes good is, because I knew that he was doing a little bit of meditation a while ago, stopped doing it quite a bit. And I say, look, have you reflected on when you're feeling this way, when you're thinking these particular negative thoughts that are not useful, have you thought about it when you're in a better state or in a positive state? Because you sure as fuck don't think about it like that, right? You won't think about it then. And when you actually reflect on it and go, oh, that's not what I really think. That's just my emotional sense at that particular point in time. And so on it goes. And you both have got that experience. You'll have experiences when you'll be dumped, you'll be at a bad time, and you'll feel like, am I worth it? Should I be doing this? What the fuck am I doing? Do I look like a fool? And then you'll be on top of the world. You'll do something really amazing. You'll be like, oh, fucking, this is wonderful. And so maybe that is one superpower that maybe it's not apparent to us both, but that we do really well, which is, retrospecting on things, introspecting on a few different things. And we do it in different ways. Like I do it now, I guess specifically if people want to define it, how do we do it? I do journaling daily. What has come down to for me is mind, body, and soul. I give it a ranking out of 5, 1 to 5. I type in 3 things I'm grateful for the day. Normally I'll do it the day afterwards in the morning. And I also just pull notes. And I also have another column for Vienna. So like actually thinks about what's happened in her life and her day.
That's a good one to keep.
And then just my hours of slept. That's it. But that is enough that I'm reflecting about. Plus I do a monthly reflection. There's an annual reflection. There's a lot of reflections. That's how I do it. How do yours look like now? Has it shifted much from it? I know it's shifted, but right now?
Very, very vague at the moment. I wake up in the morning and I'll spend, I don't know, half a minute just breathing in and out, just trying to follow the breath a bit. That's kind of my meditation at this moment. And it's not as strong as it used to be, where I would have dedicated times of meditation, of making sure I'm journaling in this particular way. Once again, I think this comes in waves, and maybe it's something that will be more useful in 6 months' time, 8 months' time. I'm actually thinking, guess what, Juan? I'm going to start another podcast.
Another one?
Yeah, I was thinking of maybe a journal / Mere Mortals International or Mere Mortals Hobbies or something like that.
If you do it Mere Mortals Journal, I'll join you in adding to that stuff, because I'll definitely just use things that I've got in there.
Yeah.
I'm already creating content, so we could leverage that.
But definitely more just a blurting out whatever's kind of going through my head at the moment, a funny observation, things, because we're doing this Meanderings one a little bit less. It's kind of nice to have that internal thoughts kind of just be able to come out, which I think vague thing in the future, nothing
cemented right now.
Yeah, and yeah, it is nice to be able to still have those learnings that I took from when I did meditation a lot more, yesterday, for example, Friday, I had an amazing workout. One of the best I've had. I had a really shit one. One of the worst I had in, when it was probably 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
This one here was one of the best I've had in years.
Yep, 8.5 out of 10.
It was about that, yeah.
Okay.
And what was it that triggered it? I'm not particularly sure. I went to Balimba by the river. I was on my own. I was playing the music loud. The sun was beautiful, just like today. And I was going, man, this is living.
It was good.
It's
yeah,
so
yeah,
good.
Yeah,
just
yeah.
pump the music, playing some Skrillex loud as I could. It was so awesome. And I just felt really strong that day as well, which helped. And my balance was really on point. And I spent some minutes just during that session, just as I'm just resting, just sitting there going, yeah, man, this is good. Appreciate this moment, because it comes around so infrequently.
Well, and
I want to capture this one right here.
Yeah, and let me try to put it into practical terms. A few thoughts going here, so I'm going to try and capture them all. So there's a comparable thing to this, which is when you're trying to put your kid to bed, right? And you'll find out this one day when you put your kid to bed, and the first time they ever sleep 8 hours, and you go, shit, all right, they were wearing this, it was this time, we fed them at this time, we did this.
Nice.
And then, in your mind, you go, okay, well, I can repeat that.
That makes
kind of the hypothesis is here, I did this, they slept this much, I'm going to do it again, and they don't do it, right? So you kind of then learn on as you go through, okay, no, it's by chance that it can happen. Maybe you can work out with some things. Obviously, if you feed them at the right time, that does help. Some other things, like what they're wearing, it's a less of a variable. Mm-hmm. So there's that one aspect of, look, sometimes you might think that you're influencing it, but sometimes it isn't. But there is another, there's an idea around luck. And luck is definitely influenced in some ways by the amount of times or the net that you throw out to catch some luck. And the more repetitions you put into certain things, the more likely you're going to be lucky to find one of those good days. So, did you influence the fact that 2 weeks ago you had a really terrible workout, and then 2 weeks later, it was a freaking smashing workout?
Exact same workout as well.
Not really. Like, part of it, sure, there's some percentage of the human, of the mere mortal, that influence it to be such a thing because you were disciplined, because you put in the effort of eating, whatever it might be. But sometimes it's just the fact that you put in the reps over many years to allow for more potential for the luckiness to have a fantastic session. And it is, if you hadn't gone out on that day to do the workout, then you wouldn't have had a fantastic session.
Exactly.
That's it. Yeah. Even if you felt freaking amazing, you wouldn't have.
The day before I took off, because that was the day that Lucas left, and so I had woken up, and because I had an alarm set for the first time in 6 months, I had a bad night's sleep because I was thinking about the alarm, and I had a slight crick in the neck. So I took the day off before, and there was a thought, it might be good to just take one more day off. I've still got something a little bit in my neck. I've still got something a little bit in my side, but I went, no, this is definitely manageable. Yeah. You've worked out through much worse stuff than this.
Yeah, but so then it gets me back to this point, because I was trying to see how do I warp this in, because what I've seen a lot of our goals and the way that we talk about things, and in the way that you're reflecting on the day, similar to me, it's moved a lot from the quantitative sort of aspect of it to a more qualitative checks, right? But the only reason that we've been able to do that, and I wouldn't, because sometimes when you get so far down the track of doing something, you can't really explain to someone how to begin it, because it is very different. For this, I kind of have an idea. It is, you don't go all the way to the qualitative like we are now. No, you start at the quantitative. Why? Between us, dude, we've probably done of self-reflections more than 6,000 times, right?
A lot.
That's a lot. That's a hell of a ton of self-reflection. At that point, you've got enough reps in the bank that you can be more qualitative. You don't need to be putting the exactness of your hours of this and whatever. You just know. You just know how it's tracking, and you can be a little bit more qualitative and you be more efficient with it / know what's important. But when you're beginning, no, that isn't the case of get really quantitative, get really specific, measure it, get all those things. That at the beginning. So I think there's a differentiation between those two for sure.
Same with counting macros, I feel.
Yep,
that's
absolutely.
a great one where you...
Here's an example now. I haven't counted macros for a year plus. I don't, and I just roughly know exactly how much... Like, I kind of can give you a range of my calories that I'm eating and that I'm expending. Fine. I'm not calculating it, but that always is built up on now 15 years plus of actually doing on and off calorie counting in some way, shape, or form, whether it's been very meticulous or just... here and there. So
yep, definitely. All right, another exciting thing.
Here we go. Is it actually going to be exciting? No, I will point out, folks, it isn't to me, but that's an exciting thing. When you can actually take off it for 7 months, that's a cool thing.
The Boostagram Ball, this is
What?
This is a moment I think is going to come down in history. History has happened this last weekend, and I missed it, of course. Fuck you, Australia. This is one reason why I would move to El Salvador, just for this, because the time zone things, you miss all the cool stuff.
Sure, that is a good point.
The Boostagram Ball is I guess I'd call it a music podcast by Adam Curry. He started it up this last weekend, and basically it's kind of the culmination of the last 3 years of what he's been working on, and if you want to really include it, his whole life. And basically what it is, it's a podcast where he plays music. It's basically a radio DJ set, but all of these songs are songs that people have put up onto Wavelac or as an RSS. And so they're participating in the value for value model. So all of them have a lightning feed in their RSS, and just due to some crazy tech, it's absurd how all this stuff works. He plays the song.
Let's just caveat this. Is it crazy for you, or is it genuinely crazy in the stream of technology and its principles?
Oh, jeez.
Are you amazed by it, or are techie people amazed by it?
Well,
be honestly.
I don't know who gets to decide what's a techie person.
You're not a techie person, but if someone was like a developer from 20 years saw this and went, "Whoa, this is freaking awesome."
Dave Jones is a developer for ages. He's been working on this stuff. And yeah, I'd say the acronyms they were using the adjectives they were using were amazing, crazy, that sort of stuff.
Okay.
So I think so.
Okay.
Adam Curry helped invent podcasting. He's saying it's amazing. He's slightly techie. He's not writing code himself, but he knows a lot of the stuff.
Okay.
Anyway, what this does is it's trying to capture exactly why I think it's revolutionary, in a sense.
Revolutionary or evolutionary?
Revolutionary.
Revolutionary.
I think I think this will be viewed as just as kind of a pivotal thing as podcasting was, as it's become. So, yes, in 2 years' time, people will look at this thing and go, it's just a different change, but I think this is a step change is what he's done now. And basically, I haven't explained it well because Juan keeps interrupting. It's a way for musicians to make money from their audience without having to go through the music industry, which is ASCAP, BMI, shit, Spotify, earnings, deals. I think all of that incentives, the way it's structured and set up, it's not great for musicians. I haven't had a first-hand experience of it because I'm not a musician, but the general vibe I get is it's good if you're on the very top, and if you're in the long tail, you're shit out of luck. You barely make any money from 100,000 streams of a song, which is pretty fucking good. You know, that's a lot of people tuning in and listening, or a dedicated bunch tuning in and listening a lot of time. In either case, you don't get any money from that. And so what it does is basically when he plays the song, it's the value switches over. So as I was listening and just had my normal streaming amount set up, that went to the musicians. So he played maybe 10 songs. That whole time, the money I was sending was going through to these different musicians. And I'm so certain of this, of how crazy this is. I'm willing to make a bet.
Okay.
And so I'm just chucking this out there. Million sat bet. And I'm not sure what time period. I was initially saying when I'm 35, but then I went, nah, I'll make it out till 40. So that's about 8 years' time.
Okay.
Because I think this stuff takes a long time. And I will bet that Spotify is bankrupt or has been sold on or is a shell of its former self in 8 years' time. When I turn 40. So 8.5 years' time, I guess. And no one needs to come on the other side of this bet. I'll throw it up as I'll give it to the mere mortals, or I'll do something with it. But yeah, a million sats is, and it's much like biology did. This is more of a signaling thing rather than the actual bet itself. It's just
much more poorer version, but
yeah, of course. Maybe a million sats in 8 years' time is actually not $1 million, but
hyperinflation hits
$4,000, $5,000 in equivalent today's. That would be nice. In today's money, it's about 400 and something, 440
Australian dollars. Yep.
Yes, and it's hard to explain. You'll hear more of this over the coming months, but
What over the coming months? Baller boost?
I think just musicians starting to see how there's a better model out there than the current one that's set up.
And by musicians, I'm assuming you're meaning not the already wealthy ones.
It can work for them, and I think it will work for some of them, especially back catalogs that they own, things like that.
That they truly own? Or that is already
that they
owned?
truly own, that
Right.
they have exclusive rights to. Those, and once again, if you're a big musician, that's probably hard to say because it's controlled by the band and the manager and this sort of
that's
thing.
where I disagree with you, because really, really big musicians, they make a fucking truckload of money in the existing system, right?
Yeah.
That's no doubt about that, and everyone else just gets absolutely gypped, right? You're either making it right at the top or you're just screwed. Relatively so. But in this newer system, at least how I understand it is, it's more normalizing in the sense that, hey, a lot of people can make a living out of it.
Let's look at Snoop Dogg, for example. That dude's wealthy as fuck, and he still succeeds in the current system, from what I can tell. Yet he has been very, very interested in NFTs and music things and Web3 and all that sort of stuff. I personally don't think that's the way to go and where the big revolution will happen. Mm-hmm. I feel like something needs to happen with the music industry. It's so bad that it causes so much pain to musicians, that smaller musicians, that they need to do something and they're willing to experiment and try different things.
Yeah.
I think it'll personally come from this kind of value for value music, but once again, this is the point of the bet. It's just me staking out my stake and saying I think this moment in 10 years' time will be a pretty big moment.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I don't see that being the case. Like, I don't see Spotify or an equivalent becoming a shell of itself.
Well, in particular, Spotify. Apple's different because they've got the whole Apple brand. The phones, all that sort of stuff. Amazon's different because they've got all the box, the physical retailers. They dominate the marketplace and things like that. Spotify is uniquely fucked, I think, because they rely on the podcasting and the royalties, the music. So, yeah, I'm in particular Spotify. I think are going to struggle over the next 5-10 years.
That's an interesting thought. I think you're missing. I think you're the differentiation between a model.
Unless they adopt value for value.
Well, that's what I mean. Between a model and a company is a very different thing. Now, they could go down the way of Kodak, where they do not decide to change. They go down the way of Blockbuster. They do not decide to change. Could happen again. They decide not to change, and then of course that could happen for sure. They don't follow innovation, and then you get overtaken.
Yeah, I should caveat that if they adopt value for value, well, obviously I think they'll succeed.
To be frank, and what I foresee to happen, what I think may happen, right? And I think I've established this in my mind is that if the value for value mentality or the way that it works, right, the actual system or the implementation of it succeeds enough that it starts taking away percentages from the really big players by like a significant amount, what I just see as overwhelmingly obvious is these players have much more money to just buy it all out and hopefully keep that system in play. Or they could just crush it and throw it away.
What do you mean by buy it all out?
There could be a potential.
You mean come in and kind of buy Fountain or buy...
Correct. Yeah. All the connectivity that comes along with it. Now, there are ways that those have also been structured that kind of disallows that, right? It doesn't incentivize it as well for a company because it's not structured for it to make as much money as possible either. So I don't know. I don't think that it would result in like I wouldn't have put that bet, but I get where the mentality is coming from, and I do think that there's going to be a shift in the landscape of music listening over the next 10 years. I'd put a bet on that for absolute certain.
I was looking at the Spotify's earning calls this last quarter, and then I went and looked back in their annual reports. First of all, US annual reports are ugly as fuck. I don't know if it's intentionally made that way, as if it's a legal requirement to make it ugly as fuck, because they look kind of similar. The
I thought Spotify wasn't even based in the US.
Yeah, it's kind of, I think maybe Liechtenstein. It's Swedish, but I remember they were saying something about Liechtenstein and their tax. So it's probably one of those Spotify US, Spotify Sweden, much like Rio Tinto has Rio Tinto UK, Rio Tinto Australia. But anyway, I was reading this thing, and then I was starting to look at their actual earnings, and much like Uber, they've never made a profit. So this is also playing into it, which is the general economics that I think is going to happen over the next 5-10 years, which is the free money aspects of just money printer go brrr, and VCs and things like that.
Just in the way that you say that, though, and I've seen it at times, I go, man.
People were saying this back in 2008.
Are you people
though,
financially literal enough, though, to actually have seen it and understand where that funding's coming from? I'm not saying myself I even know that, because I've heard that a lot. I've heard this a ton of time. Dude, I heard it years ago. They're like, Spotify's about to go under because they're not making any profit. They're still around. Now, I would ask you, are they still taking VC funding? Like, is it purely VC funding that's holding them up?
Well, I don't know, but whatever it is, if you're not making a profit, there's got to be some hard reality at some point, right?
Oh, absolutely. There's going to be a hard reality at some point. But if you look at the most companies' creations, right, generally most of them don't run a profit. Just like when you buy a property, it doesn't have to be a net profit straight away.
Yeah, of course, straight away. But how long's Spotify been around for?
True.
10 years,
and true. So it could have been a few years. Dude, I'm sure you could find many other companies who also didn't become profitable for a very long time until they did, and then just went, ridiculous.
20 years? This is something I might, if anyone has any book recommendations on this, or I've heard of things like zombie companies before as well, where they are these kind of shell companies that they somehow just manage to survive year after year because they get injections of cash from somewhere, even though they never actually make any money.
Yeah, that and this is one of the pieces of moving into the year of the 31-year-old annual goals. One of my pieces, which is very simply said, they're definitely in the soul aspect, is understanding over assumptions. And I think a lot of the time I would have just assumed that particular statement of the financial side of Spotify is, hey, they're not making any profit. And you can go and look at the earnings and the profit. But I do realize the understanding that I'm not ridiculously financially literate to understand where exactly some of this funding is coming from, right? Now, I'm not in depth into your accounting or any details and whatnot, but I can tell you right now, you could set up a company structure. Maybe they're even doing that to reduce the tax, right? There's some potentials around that and moving money elsewhere. That's not an unknown thing. That's like a very clever thing that people do. You can look at the Amazon Australia company as well. There's very similarities that they do that to get around the taxation here in Australia. That's known. I've seen it, right? So if you looked at their financials, you go, shit, this motherfucker's about to run out of money too. Not really. That's not how it works. So I'd go, honestly, my understanding of it is that I've seen the detail. I would like, and yeah, I would either a book recommendation but you'd have to be a pretty recent book recommendation or someone like reviewing it or seeing more of a generic view of the companies. Because I don't buy it. I smell movement of money to different areas that it might seem that way, but not be the full reality. So
yeah, it could be.
But this is coming from a very mere mortal, not understanding a directive view. I say I've heard about it. I couldn't conclusively say what that actually means for the company.
Yeah. Well, that's why I just chucked this random bet out, just to say, so it's not just me making a prediction without any skin in the game. If someone wants to jump on the other side of that,
feel free to take it. Feel free to take Kyrin on the million sat bet.
And so much stuff could happen, and I can see so many potential problems. Value for value, if you people start doing covers of songs and then making money from that, there's going to be so many lawsuits, much like when Napster was occurring, that the lawsuits were just bonanzas.
Well, one of the things that is going to clash really heavily is the utilization of AI into a whole host of spaces.
That was my second one.
A huge piece that I've been listening to, I've been listening to so much AI stuff now, so much. And what cleverly in the Web3 space / AI and a few other spaces is the legal conversations are about to begin quite heavily, at least in America. I know there's quite a few going to the high court style conversations similar to image usage in AI with, I think it's Getty Images or something, take them to court because of the utilization without the payment.
I believe Sarah Silverman was also something like this, the comedian, and she was saying they're using parts of her jokes or
to create something else. And then there was a conversation about the differences between straight out copywriting or kind of like repurposing or reusing the likeness of something to create something else. So look, there's going to be some absolute grey lines. In music as well, I've started to listen to a few songs created with AI. That sound awesome. I'm like, oh, this is cool.
Okay.
Especially through TikTok, right? But these are like a cover of Evanescence sung by Cartman. From.
So not genuine.
No, not genuine, but awesome to listen to. Dude, if I was a song, I'd listen to it. I was like, this is great. I wonder whether this is all going to land on the spectrum of legality. I don't know how it plays out. On somewhere where it becomes a little bit more decentralized, a little bit just of go how you want, maybe in like the Valley for Valley stream. Is there a reach that comes legally? It's like, hey, no, you cannot do this without now paying back the royalties back to this way. So on a split payment, perhaps, like to say, hey, I'm putting a split to this creator, and are they now going to be like, well, it's mandatory, you must go and pay this existing company who owns the royalties for blah 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 blah. I don't know. It'll be an interesting world.
Yeah, one of the things that really has sparked my enthusiasm and excitement was, and I was thinking about this because I'm reading the Longer Tail by Chris Anderson at the moment. It's a updated edition of The Long Tail, and he was the editor of Wired magazine, and this book is relatively well known. It's pretty popular. And he's basically examining the music industry and how digital online marketplaces have changed, and he was writing this, I think it was around 2008, something close to then.
The Long Tail or The Longer Tail?
Both. Well, The Long Tail, which became the updated edition maybe 2 years later. Okay. So it's essentially the same book, I believe. And he kept on referring to this thing called Rhapsody, which I've never heard of before. Do you know Rhapsody? It's basically what happened to Napster. The name changed from that, and then they started doing, so it's kind of before Spotify, I guess, was the online streaming of audio. I believe that's kind of the rough time period. And he was saying, in The Longer Tail, in all of these artists who aren't well known, the unknown hits, so you've got the big, I don't know what you call it, the exponential curve, but it's the opposite way around of what you normally see. It's all stacked on one end, so all the money is going to the Spotify, these huge hit artists, and then in The Longer Tail, no one's getting recognized. And he was saying the digital revolution has allowed that to become more accessible and available, much like Amazon did that for books. This place called Rhapsody did it for music and things like that. And he was saying the quality in there can vary. You have some really shit stuff,
sure,
but there's a lot of gems in there as well, which are kind of just as good as the hits of the artists, but it's kind of a discovery problem, how do you find them? Because there's just so much stuff out there. And as I was listening to Boostagram Ball, I was really enjoying the music. And I was thinking, okay, this isn't that different from stuff that I listen to normally. It was more the experience of listening to it and knowing that I was contributing to them, which got my enthusiasm going.
Right.
So it's not necessarily that the music is better per se. It's not that it was more about how I felt about it rather than the experience that I get on something such as YouTube Music, which I also use. And it didn't have that kind of personal connection, I feel, which was also why I was so enthused by it. And yeah, look, we'll see what happens. So much could change. You mentioned AI, economics, the same for my travels. Family members get sick, I get sick, the world changes, economics again. That might absolutely just throw all my rough plans into thin air. So that's the dampener to my enthusiasm.
I was just pondering that idea of why you find that enthusiastic versus the interactions on, say, YouTube Music, where they do get paid in some way.
Well,
obviously,
not really.
might not directly, but they do get paid somewhat through the YouTube Google platform itself.
Not really.
Not directly, but people making fucking good money from it as well. So I kind of go.
I don't know if some of those artists that I listen to, which are deep into the niches, are making any money.
If the value for value model allows people to make a living wage, then that's all you can ask. I don't know what the economics looks like at the moment. If there's enough, see, there's the thing though. If there's enough people entering the system, does the system enable enough the volume of artists to come in to satisfy the system?
How many people do you think subscribe to Spotify Premium? I should have looked this up when I was in the annual reports.
No. I'd say 20 million.
So it'd be a small percentage of the database of the actual, what do they call it? Monthly active users.
Let's see what we quickly bring up.
I would guess maybe 20 to 30% pay for the premium, which is still a lot more than the 4%.
It is estimated that there are over 517.69 million Spotify users worldwide.
Yeah.
In total, and approximately 229 million premium subscribers.
Okay, there you go. More than I thought. Yeah. So what's that? 40%? Something close to that.
So when you think about when you look at that, what I'm trying to just be, because sometimes the problem in many companies or a lot of systems is what it looks like when you scale. When you scale huge, when you scale big. If the current, and this would be a question to you who maybe knows this better, or someone directly in the Value for Value community, if we scaled right now to 500 million people tuning in, right as we speak, with the same amount of podcasters and people in the system, does the system then still enable what it's trying to underlyingly give to most of its users or consumers or clients who are participating in it? Or will, by the law of numbers, just with the sheer amount of people in there, will it start gravitating again to a certain amount of artists or players, and then reduces the amount of money that's going to some of the niche ones once again?
It will do that, but when it's just direct peer-to-peer payments, I think that's the core underlying principle of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Changes the dynamics.
If the direct peer-to-peer system still exists, awesome, it's fantastic. So, but if you look at the like our podcast right now gets a good handful of Boostagrams coming through and people streaming through or listening to it, and that's going well. And for it to continue operating for us, we need to see more people actually participating, and for us to scale it up, etc. But if we then introduced, if we introduced 500 million people and it's not any extra more content creations or the quality of them, then just by numbers, of course, you're going to get more value coming through the system because there's more people providing it. Sure, awesome. But if we now in turn also grow the amount of podcasts or the amount of people participating in it to X degree, to the same quality that there is in Spotify, does the numbers work out? Is the dilution now so extreme that perhaps you lose a lot of the unique people who listen to you, and then it becomes we're now distributing the money that's in the system to lesser so and so, kind of nobody really makes now enough apart from the ones who they gravitate to make a lot of money, which is what happens in the existing system as well.
I'm just trying to think of the actual experience of the average Spotify premium user. So they pay their $9 a month and then they listen to music and they don't care about where that money goes. What if you could have something similar where you pay $9 a month, or you set a budget and there's perhaps a minimum one for some apps, and this is where I'm really hoping there'll be 5 or 10 different music apps, or the same for podcasting apps, there's 30 or whatever, and you just say, okay, I'm going to put $10 a month, that's my budget, and it just gets split up automatically between the actual people you listen to. It's being able to do in the back surface, so you don't even need to know about value for value. Perhaps it's nice, but I could definitely see that happening where, yes, a lot of this goes beneath the surface to it is going directly peer-to-peer and people don't even need to know about it. So value for value becomes the norm, but it's it's
But
also...
what's the actual example
actually, in
here?
that case, it's probably not value for value.
What's the example that you're actually giving there? Because with the differentiation saying, say you go to Spotify, you go sign up to, or whatever, a music player, and you go sign up, and it says, would you like to pay $10 a week, or would you like to pay $10 a week, and the money will be sent only to the people who you're specifically listening to?
Well, no, I'm imagining more artists are realizing, oh, I'm getting more money when people listen to me on, let's just come up with a new name, Music Badger, and they start saying, listen to me on Music Badger, not on Spotify. And the same sort of experience, you go, there's a budget, i.e. a subscription, something like that, and then they get more money directly from their music listeners,
which
isn't
too different from what you could do with existing systems right now.
Exactly, yeah. So
like a PayPal,
and once again, the more I think about it, that kind of trends away from value for value, which is really emphasizing the aspect of sending the value that you want to your favorite creator. So it is different from that.
Like, it is cool if you could send directly. If I could send a direct message with value to a band that I really like, that's awesome. I can't do that in the current system. Like, this is new features that I'd be really happy to. But if you're just talking about just sending funding to X artists that you listen to, why is anyone going to give a shit realistically out there that you're sending it?
Well, this is once again where I say probably just in broad scale economics, that would probably work better than what Spotify is having to do with all the legal contracts, the middlemen, the financial shenanigans, and all that sort of crap.
Well, but what it does, and I think that the question should be is, if you then take away you take like the operation of Spotify out, throw it away, and all the legality, all the costs. If you then get those costs, and then you insert into the system that is now running through this P2P system, does that then create a better system that is now can flourish much better? Now, it sounds like it does.
I would say yes, just because of the middleman aspect. You get rid of a lot of just people who have gotten to the top and then want their cut, and they're not adding value per se. I feel my general perception is there's a lot of that in the music industry.
I know, but I agree totally. But you got to really, in the practical terms, so you take away that money, throw governance and authority and security, put it into this other area which might be more secure in certain aspects. What happens currently if the RSS that you run for value breaks?
So at the moment it's hosted on Blueberry, so I'd probably email them and be like, what the fuck, man?
Of course. What if now Blueberry, and instead fucking another 100 of them, and 1 million people are emailing them all because, say, something breaks or whatever, and it is because it's very unique, right? You're owning your own system that you're participating in. It kind of sounds like you're going to have a middle manager supporting security or the layer of the technology around it. Yes or no?
You're talking from the artist side at the moment,
from the artist, yep. So if they start managing what I would imagine, their own feed, right, in terms of what they're producing, and something goes wrong, because now the ownership of that going wrong is on the artist, less so on a Spotify that makes sure that the platform itself is working as they appropriately do, they would have to then go manage that.
Yeah. I mean, it's how is that different from something breaking though with how it currently works?
Oh, no, well, true, but it doesn't as often. I maybe this actually, I'm assuming here, I don't know how often a Spotify link will break if you're using Spotify's Anchor.
I don't know. Google was fucking up for me today on the Chrome Brave browser. It's just a funny little example that a massive company has something so critical to the experience. It happened 4 times. I was trying to type something in just in the top browser just to look something up, and it broke. I'm like, fuck. Had to go onto Google Chrome or use Microsoft Edge.
Right, okay. Which, by the way, Microsoft Edge and Google Chrome are basically the same. They're both Chromium websites, so they're both Chrome. So.
Well, Brave as well it's got that Chrome underlying thing, doesn't it?
Chromium as well.
Yeah, so I don't know why it worked on Google Chrome and not on Brave, but anyway.
Whichever way. I just think these questions, especially when we talk about like the financials and the Spotifys, I go, people are not looking at this deep enough.
That's why I gave myself 8 years.
These are questions which we're not qualified to answer.
I'm going to win my bet with the super volcano in America explodes, and that's where Spotify headquarters are based.
I'm
going to win the
volcano at? Is that in Nevada or whatever it is in the
Yellowstone
National Park? That's right. Yeah, that's going to blow up and kill everyone. Every single Spotify employee will die, and that's how Kyrin will win.
And that's how I win my bet.
All right, anything else today?
No. So it was more. Yeah, all of this was just to say the enthusiasm, excitement of things changing. Mm-hmm. I think things are going to change a lot, and like we said, you also think for the music industry somehow. Mm-hmm. I really hope it's value for value. I really do. I just think it's so much better than everything else. But as I was saying to Kyrin Nolan, I could just be crazy. Maybe this is what Bitcoin people felt like in 2011. They think they've discovered this thing. No one else cares about it. Or you can see only the technical hurdles. You can only see not just the technical, the societal hurdles, all of this sort of shit. And you have a rough vision of what you think the world would be like if this got introduced and if it changed. And to be honest, it's still kind of like that. It's not a huge thing. I kind of feel like it's maybe like that, which also means I'm probably a bit crazy because the chances of Bitcoin working were so slim because anyone, a person with
I think it was in
$10 million could have come in.
2010. I can't remember what year it was. 2010 or 2011, just before Mt. Gox. That someone actually, there was a...
Mt. Gox was much later than that.
Well, I'm thinking it was before Mt. Gox, but there was an issue with the actual protocol of Bitcoin, and someone created 180 billion Bitcoin, and then
it went down for a little bit.
They had to soft fork, like Satoshi himself had to soft fork it, and to disallow that, and it did stay for a little bit, but then it kind of went away. Obviously those early days, but it still feels like early days in comparison to a lot of things. There's some value in the peer-to-peer across other systems, which I think it can influence for sure.
Much like I don't think Bitcoin will eat the whole world in 50 years' time, as in there'll be no fiat currencies or anything like that. I think there's just a lot of room for value to grow, is probably my sum up point.
Yep, I like it. All right, Immortalize, we're going to leave it there then. This has been a Meandering session, and once again, we do ask that if you want to support us here at the Mere Mortals podcast, it is through providing a time, talent, or treasure. Time, you're listening to us at the moment. Talent, that's sending through some sort of
recommendations,
message.
Like we were saying, if you have any financial background in some of these companies, if you work for one of them, if you have any good book recommendations on finances of companies, of the financial shenanigans, and can correct us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
do
me,
so.
especially.
Feel free. Enlighten us, I guess.
That would be very helpful, yeah.
But again, so there's the treasure aspect and talent. If you can help us out, of course, there's that as well. For now, me and Mortals, we're going to leave it there, and I hope you have enjoyed this little meandering session outdoors. For now, that's all. One out.
Kyrin out. Bye.
Good. Fuck Spotify. Good.